Hey everybody. So the Cube computer PortaCube system is temporarily back at home. It's been home for about a week now, roughly, since I was off, or I took off for spring break, and I've taken some time to do some upgrades to this thing. So my plans were to set this thing up to where I could overclock it a little bit. I was looking to get a little bit of extra performance out of the CPU, or really more of the iGPU, because a lot of times what I'll do is for QComp MDDX, of course I do my storm videos, but I have hours upon hours of raw footage that I time-lapse, or I speed up by 64 times through Windows Live Movie Maker, and it uses the GPU for that, and it takes a pretty good little while to complete a video. It takes a little bit longer than it does on the Mid-Tower Lux to do it, so I decided to go ahead and see if I could push a little more out of that iGPU and that Ryzen 5 5600G, but then I come to realize that the motherboard in this machine, the ASRock A520M-HTV, well, the A520 chipset does not support overclocking. Now, there are overclocking options in the BIOS, but they're kind of limited. And AMD's Ryzen Master, well, it basically told me that the system did not support overclocking, so I did some looking online and discovered that the A series chipsets, like the A520, did not support it, but yet the B series, like the B550, do support it. So to my understanding, it's the AMD A series chips that don't support it, or chipsets, not the processors, but the chipsets don't support it, but the B series and the X series do. It wasn't long after I built this machine, probably a month later, something like that, neighbor up the street upgraded his computer, and I just happened to remember, you know what, I ended up putting a B550 motherboard in this machine, and the guy who owns this machine does not do overclock, and he's not a computer enthusiast. He uses this thing to browse the web and stuff like that, and the stock performance has been super great for him. So what I ended up doing is I got this computer back over here for the weekend. I'm going to go ahead and put Windows 11 on it, since this machine does meet the Microsoft EliteClass administrative requirements for Windows 11. So we'll be putting Windows 11 on it, but I also did a motherboard switcheroo. Yes, I took the B550 board out of this one, put it in that, and took the A520 board out of that and stuck it in this. Because the two boards, they're very, very similar in overall specs. Matter of fact, the layout of these two is nearly identical. The only difference would be, of course, the chipset and the placement of the single lane PCI Express slots. That's about the only difference these two motherboards have. And of course, both of these had the Ryzen 5 5600G installed. I swapped over the RAM, swapped over the M.2 SSDs, and of course changed the motherboards out, and both are up and running. I still got to put Windows 11 on this thing, but it's currently got Windows 10 on it at the moment. So this machine here now has the B550 board, and now when I launch Ryzen Master, it pops up and it does not tell me that the system does not support overclocking. Of course, it does give you the warning that you are basically voiding your warranty by overclocking your AMD processor, but previously what would happen is it would also pop up saying that the system does not support overclocking, and the Ryzen Master software would just show me everything like what's going on right now, but it will not give me options to change anything. So I have not actually messed around with this thing just yet. I'm looking to get this machine here finished up and back on its way before I start to really mess with this one. So another thing I did to this machine is I installed a video capture device. I had this video capture PCI Express card stuck in my drawer of expansion cards over there, The only issue really had was had some bulging caps here, so I recapped it. Got these replacement caps on there and tested it on the Cucur Plexi in a separate video, and it seemed to work just fine. And in addition, I have added media ports to the front of this system. Kind of a hack job, but hey, I mean, do what you got to do. So we have, of course, S-Video right there on the left. We also have a composite, and as well as two RCA audio channels right there, to where if I'm capturing for like a VCR or something, I can just plug it right into the front. Now, considering this is my work machine, I don't know if I'll ever be using this for quite a while, but this computer, in addition to being my work system, it also serves as my backup for the Mid-Tower Deluxe. One of the reasons why I do like the XQ Pack 2 case is because it has this nice carrying handle, so it carries around like a suitcase. Let's say if something goes wrong with the Mid-Tower Deluxe, and I need to work on some video for the weekend, if I want to capture some VCR tapes or whatever, I have a backup system that can do that. Now, of course, the Plexi could do it, but I think it's cool to have more or less a backup of the Mid-Tower Deluxe right here. I mean, this thing here, even when I upgrade the Plexi with the Phenom 2 6-core CPU, this thing here is going to still run circles around it. So, another thing I did to both of these actually was I had changed out the heatsink fans. Now, the reason why the heatsink fan on this one got changed out was because I had changed out the cooling fan before I discovered that the motherboard does not support overclocking, and of course the stock Ryzen CPU cooler, it does not make use of the clips that are traditionally used on AMD CPU coolers. It rather makes use of just the stock backplate, and this gets screwed down onto your motherboard. Whereas, of course, these coolers, they, which I'll show you the cooler in just in a moment, use the traditional clip installation. So I wasn't going to go through the trouble of taking the clips back off of the motherboard. I just went and grabbed a different CPU cooler. Matter of fact, this CPU heatsink fan assembly was the one, I do think it was the one, or was very similar to the one that used to be in the system when it had its stock CPU, which is currently on the Plexi. So these motherboards do happen to support 3-pin fans. They do have one header. It's chassis fan number 2 that can support controlling a 3-pin fan. And both the BIOSes on these machines do support monitoring the CPU temp and controlling the fan based off the CPU temp. So pretty straightforward there. Considering I have a huge overstock of heatsink fans that have 3-pin fans on them, I try to put them in areas where they'll be useful. And this fan here, heatsink fan assembly, it's similar design to the stock fan or heatsink, but this one here, there's a lot more mass to it. I think these are borderline adequate for cooling these CPUs. I mean, the stock TDP on these processors, or at least the Ryzen 5 5600Gs, is like 65 watts. And they don't run very hot unless, I guess, you're overclocking them, which we'll find out soon with that one. They generally don't run very hot, but it's like, why skimp? Why not just add some extra cooling there? So we have extra cooling on this one. So now let's look at the cooling on this one. So initially this heatsink fan here I installed on this one, but considering that motherboard there would not support overclocking, it seemed kind of wasteful to have such a high-end cooler on it, so I pulled it back off and stuck that on there. This one here is the one that was cooling the AMD FX 8120 a while back. The heatsink is a heat pipe style cooler, which was OEM with the AMD 125 watt CPUs of the time, like the Phenom 2 Quad 965 or the FX 8120. they had roughly the same style cooler out of the box. Maybe a couple minor differences here and there, but what I did is I took the original fan off of it and I stuck that fan on there, which is a 3-pin controlled fan. But this fan here at full spin turns about 5,000 RPMs, which is crazy. This thing would ramp up to full speed when it used to cool the FXA 120 for a little while, but for this right here, oh man, I mean, look at the CPU temperature right now. It's 25 degrees C. So it's running nice and cool. Runs cooler than it runs cooler than it did with the stock fan. So I guess we can definitely say there's an improvement there. I mean, there's a GPU temp sitting there idling, not doing much anything, 23, 24 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to say that this right here is just barely adequate for that CPU. I heard people say you can get a little bit of extra performance out of them with the stock cooling, but it's like the stock cooling is just barely adequate. I don't like skimping on cooling. I do like having a little extra cooling there, so we got this massive, well, I ain't gonna call it massive because it's not very big, but it definitely offers some cooling capacity. The one thing I don't like about the XQ-Pack 2 case is it's so difficult to install a taller cooling solution in it. I mean, you're limited by the frame here of the case. So, I mean, you're limited by the frame of the case, but you're also limited by the power supply, because the power supply sticks out right here, and you can only go so high. I wanted to use a cooling solution like what's on the Plexi, but that just would not fit in there with the fan and all that good stuff. So it was just, couldn't do it. So I ended up resorting to a modded stock cooler for the FXA 120. And you can see the fan's not really spinning that fast right now. So when it's not, so when you don't need a whole lot of excess cooling, it can still be quiet. So anyways, there you have it. And what I'll do is, after I get some time to play around with this thing, see what I can get it to do, I may post a follow-up video on that. So anyways, that's kind of an update on this system. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Well everybody, that wraps up for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to CubeCube channel, and be sure to tick the bell, that way you get notified of new video posts. Also, I recommend following CubeCube Company on Facebook. A link is in the video description. In addition to computer tech videos, I have a second channel, CubeCompMTDX. Links are available at the end of this video. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching and your support.